Jake Paul, there's a story going around I just read on him. Jake Paul had to cut 38 pounds. Cut 38 pounds to fight Mike Perry. And first off, that did not happen. Now, I'm in defense of Paul, and I'm actually, if you stick around, I'm gonna shine his nuts a little bit here. But that did not happen. And cutting weight and losing weight are very drastically different things. I did my best in my time in this industry to help fix some of the vernacular. Some of the vernacular that was incorrect. But it used to bother me for whatever reason. For whatever reason, it would bother me when people had it wrong. Like feeling out process in boxing. There's no such thing as a feeling out process. It doesn't exist. You will never hear that in amateur boxing that's 3-3-minute rounds. And why? Because the human body is not made to go 12 3-minute rounds. And both guys know it. So instead of speaking about it, they have an unwritten contract, which is, let's move around for 4 or 5 or 6 rounds, and then we'll get down to it 5 or 6 rounds, which is all I can do, and it's all you can do, because it's all the human body was made to do. And I just share with you, talk about footwork. Oh, this guy's got great footwork. Yeah, well, bring the best amongst them and have us explain what that means, where you get to any explanation other than the way that his feet move. So we now have one on losing weight, cutting weight. And I just want to explain to you from a vernacular standpoint that there is a drastic difference. And there are very few people in the world that will ever cut weight. It doesn't matter how old you get, right? Your metabolism slows down, you start to turn 40, you start to turn 50, you start to become a senior citizen. That's dieting. Calories in versus calories out. It's the only way in the world to gain weight. It's the only way to lose weight. And I realize I just ruined every diet book that you have on your shelf. But that's it. If you want to diet, you consume less calories than you burn. That's it. And when you talk about cutting weight, okay, we're having a very different conversation. Cutting weight specifically is talking about dehydrating your body on purpose. Cut weight is a direct reference to water weight. Right? Cutting weight, losing weight, they're very different. Losing weight, dieting, very, very different things. And the reason I tell you that is when you get it down to a science, it really is a very fascinating thing. And the first person to ever make this interesting was Tom Brands. They interviewed Tom Brands when they were doing a piece that wasn't even on him. It was on Iowa Wrestling, and specifically Dan Gable, and he talked about losing weight and that he could lose 6.5 pounds in 80 minutes. So if he had to lose 8 pounds, he was going to need 110 minutes. It was just one of these things where everybody kind of pulled back and goes, wow, you've really got this down to a science. But it's a very rare craft. It's a very rare person or field where they're ever going to weigh you in before they let you go to work. In fact, I cannot think of another industry in the world that if the bosses announced we're going to put you on a scale and tell the world what you weigh before we let you go to your job, that they would not find themselves in a class action lawsuit so fast their head would spin. So it's a very unique thing. Now, you could cut 15 pounds. You could. It'd be very rare. And in all my time, right, and every single Saturday I've been on a scale since I was 9 years old. And I see other people on a scale. I go to something that's called the weigh-ins. And I still go to this day. I go as a coach. But I still go to weigh-ins. I've been watching people do this very rare thing for the better part of 40 years. And I will just tell you, you could lose 15 pounds. Now, you, to lose it, would have to weigh 200 pounds at a minimum. If you weigh 150 pounds, the statement that I'm making that you could cut, meaning dehydrate and pull water out to the tune of 15 pounds, is not true. And no matter what doctors come out and tell you that actually you could, no, I'm telling you you cannot. And I'm not telling you that if we threw you in the desert somewhere before you dehydrate and were dead that you could lose more than 15 pounds. I'm telling you that no matter how tough you are mentally, and that is a mental drill, every bit as much as physically, no matter how tough you are mentally and physically, you are not tough enough to lose more than 15 pounds. And the average you can be anybody, not just the viewer fan, even the fellow fighters, the toughest, grittiest, nastiest guys in the world who are used to this and have worked their way up are not going to be mentally tough enough to stay in the sauna for what it takes to lose more than 15. They're not going to be mentally tough enough to do what it takes to put on their plastics and their sweats and jump rope in the corner. And 15, I'm really pushing it because I'm trying to be literal. I'm trying to be very literal about this. 7 to 9, much more common. And by the way, when I tell you I'm from one of the crafts where, one of the few crafts in the world where they weigh in and make you do it, I'll also share with you, this is a North American phenomenon. Like when we get to the World Championships or the Olympic Games that are coming up in Paris, you will not see the Eastern blocs, you won't see the Russians, you won't see the European, you won't see them cutting weight like the Americans do. They'll get up and it could be a kilo to 2 kilos, which means, 4.5 to 5.5, even 6 pounds. But they would have had dinner the night before. They would have gone to bed feeling good. And the reason I do the gesture, feeling good, is it's the very first thing I think about when you get dehydrated. Your mouth gets so dry, it's hard to talk. It's hard to form words. And when you lay in bed the night before, your mind will, the craziest thoughts you could ever have. And then you'll start designing food. Like when I make weight, you see some guy eating pasta and having bread with it, and you'll think his life is so wonderful. Oh my God, this guy's got everything. Oh, and he's washing it down with a Coke. I can't believe it. Oh, if I could just be like him. Then I had a great one where I was gonna heat up a maple bar. I was gonna heat a maple bar up in the microwave, and I was gonna put Dairy Queen soft serve on top of that. And I never did it. Like by the time you weigh in, you have one sandwich, all these crazy thoughts go away. One way to pull water weight, if you're a real expert and know what you're doing, and Jake Paul has nothing but the finest advice out there, is you'll do prior to that what's called a water load. You'll load up on water and you'll load up on sodium. And then at one point you'll pull the sodium completely and you'll pull the water completely. And the day you pull the sodium, you go another 4 days with the water. I'm not trying to be exact here, but what I'm sharing with you, it's like filling a bathtub up with water and then you pull the plug out of it. And your body will consistently be giving up the water because it's used to you flushing it with water, which is why when you double cross the body and you stop putting the water in, and it takes about 15 to 20 hours for your body to realize that that's how you can get all of this weight off. And the people that I just described right now, having all of that level of expertise, are the ones that could get 15 off, and that's high. So when a story comes out that Jake Paul's gotten off 38 pounds or that he cut 38 pounds, most certainly did not, but did he lose 38 pounds? Yeah, and it's a real testament to Jake Paul. One thing that is missed in Jake Paul's career is when he fights anybody at any weight class. And he might have started this calling out Canelo. He might have started this calling out Conor McGregor. And he's in the middle or even towards the end of this experiment, and he's still calling out Canelo, and he's still calling out McGregor. But from the time that he started to call out Canelo or McGregor and the fights that they've won and lost, Jake actually has a better record than Canelo and McGregor, either separately or combined. So there's not a massive ridiculousness in that call out. But you won't see Canelo lose 38 pounds to fight somebody. You won't see Conor lose 38 pounds to fight somebody. In fact, when Conor came back against Michael Chandler, one of the very few things that Conor demanded within his contract is that he got spotted 15 pounds. That he not have to make his weight class of 155. That as he comes back and is working the kinks out, he doesn't have to pull that weight because it's so difficult to do. And the fighters, 99% of the fighters that you see retire, and they talk about, I just don't want to do this anymore, my best times are behind me, that's all code talk. What they really don't want to do is they don't want to have to make that weight again. They don't want to have to beat the scale. 99.9% of fighters retire because of the weigh-in. They never say it to you because they don't know how. They don't know how to explain it. You don't know the difference between dieting, losing weight, and cutting weight, which is why I'm coming to you now. And when Jake Paul goes out and does that, it really does speak to the hunger. It really does speak to the years that he's got left. Fighters will abuse their body. They'll hide for guys. They'll run from guys. All you got to do to run from a guy you're scared of is get to a weight class lower than he fights at. All you got to do to get away from a guy that you're scared of is move up in weight. Get to a weight class he doesn't fight at. But that's kind of what Jake Paul did, and he did it either way. He went all the way down to fight Mike Perry, and he put the weight on because he thought he was getting in there with Mike Tyson. I mean, not for nothing, it's yet another thing that Jake Paul not just talks about doing, he has done that separates himself. He is more willing to do what it takes, no matter what it takes, to find himself in a really hard fight. Could you imagine having to lose 38 pounds? After you tried to put size on because you thought you were fighting a heavyweight, could you imagine losing 38 pounds and your only reward is you get shut in there on a Saturday night with Mike Perry? That's tough stuff. That's tough stuff. And before you go out there and you put the mouth to Paul, you should consider how impressive that is.